Good morning, everybody. I'm your girl, Maria Tobert, the creator of the Rose Color Movement, and this is another Self-Care Saturday segment. Again, you could have been anywhere this morning, but you decided to tune in with me, and for that, I am grateful. If you happen to be watching it on the replay, that's fine too. Just leave a comment, let me know you came by. As always, the Self-Care Saturday segment is all about bringing guests on an array to talk about an array of topics to meet you right where you are in your self-care journey. And that could be anything. So I bring on everybody. And this Saturday, I have a return guest. Now, the last time Monica was here, she was here as just her by herself. But this time she was able to bring her husband, Vincent Hunter, to talk about marriage. Together, they created the LoveWorks community that we talked about in detail when she was here. It actually was in January, I believe. So you can actually go to Facebook or to YouTube to find the video when Monica came on and talked about her journey. But they are now about to embark on a marriage and relationship webinar series that they'll be co-facilitating. And I was like, what better time for them to come on to talk about marriage, love works. The topic I put today was that marriage work if love works. And it's all about intentionality. She told us a little bit about that when she was here before, but we don't want to wait any longer. We want to go ahead and bring them on so they can start sharing their story and those nuggets of information about marriage and how to be successful. Because trust me, they got it. They got a plan. They got it. Okay, guys. All right. Without further ado, let me bring them on. Good morning.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello, Vincent. Welcome to the Rose Color Movement.
Yeah, thank you for
Monica's
having me this time.
we were like, we were talking about bringing you on the last time. I was like, oh, it'll be so cool. She's like, I'm gonna bring him. I'm gonna get him to come on and look. Ta-da! You're here.
Ta-da.
So I just want to start at the beginning. I want to be able to introduce you. Monica gave us her background and how the journey looked from her perspective as far as you guys creating the LoveWorks community. So I want people to get an opportunity to get your perspective, and then we'll jump right into you guys' journey and your relationship and all of that.
Cool. So Love Works actually came about probably 10, 12, 13 years ago originally when we were living out in Texas. And it started out as a marriage ministry at our church there in Texas. And just over having kids, we had twins and turned around 15 months later, had another little girl, and it just kind of got on the back burner for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple years ago, through I'm sure Monica shared last time about a story that went viral, and she ended up being on the Steve Harvey show and writing a book, and then it just everything started to come back around full circle. But this time, instead of just all about marriage, it was the Love Works community where we realized that it wasn't just about the married couples, it was about the entire community. The entire community needed examples of marriages, strong marriages, needed examples of love in the community. And now it's just opening up for us to talk about marriage when it comes on different series we have coming up on webinars. We did an event a couple weeks back for Valentine's with a church, and we have some things coming up over the next couple months in New York. So we're just excited to be able to share our story and to help other individuals see how love works if you do.
Yeah, I thought it was cool to bring you guys on just because, as I said before, with a lot of the guests that I bring on, it's the relatability of the guests. It's that you guys are not selling a dream that like is far fetched or things that people can't attain on their everyday life. It's like you guys are talking about real deal, being transparent, ups and downs. Monica was like, everything is not always rose petals. It's like that's not even what you're focusing on. You're focusing on being intentional about the commitment that you made to your family and your partner. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about you guys' story so we could talk about why you've gotten to the point where you want to introduce or be a part of facilitating marriage conversations. Either one of you
Well,
can take it away.
I think it's just been a natural occurrence for Vincent and I. And I say like Vincent and Monica because that's the norm for me. We met as college sweethearts. And so most of the people in our circle and now social media, even on our separate pages, it's always Vincent and Monica. So that's just a part of who we are and just the real essence of who we are as people. We've genuinely become one. It's funny, somebody put on one of our posts the other day, y'all starting to look alike. I guess that's what happened. I guess you start to kind of really morph into one. But I remember when we were asked a question by a close friend of ours, and it was early in our marriage, like, how do we make our marriage stay together? And we were like, we work at it. And we've always worked at it, even as a couple dating. It was work. We were kids when we met in college. We were like 18 and 19. And so we've evolved a lot together. And through that evolution, especially now with social media, people who have seen us at our worst also get to see us, where God has brought us today. And so we feel like honestly, it's our service to our community and the people that we love to be open and to be transparent that it's hard. It's hard work. But at the end of the day, we love each other. We've always been committed to the love that we have for each other. And so helping people understand that has just been a very important part of our relationship, is to say, no, it's not always beautiful and perfect. You get to see our family photos and everybody's smiling. But there's typically a lot of stand up straight that's gone into get yourself together. Don't get out here acting crazy. There's a lot of that goes into it, but that's part of the journey. That's part of the realness. That's part of the rawness. So there's nothing you can ask us that we're not going to be open about it, because we're not ashamed of what we've had to go through to get to where God is taking us.
Well,
Yeah,
plus,
go ahead. Sorry.
and I was going to add on, plus, just wanting to be able to set like realistic expectations for young couples, because a lot of times, like I'll say, when I was growing up, you saw marriages, but those people were not transparent. So it was always like living in a fairy tale. When you saw marriages, you didn't know good marriages from bad marriages because they didn't show it. They did everything behind closed doors. They argued behind closed doors, and they didn't. So since they didn't share with us real life experiences, we had maybe false expectations or false hopes of what marriage really looked like, versus like, okay, marriage can be great, it can be love, but also it can be work. And even if there are some mistakes, there are some hiccups, doesn't mean it has to be over.
Yeah.
So just helping young couples realize that you, with the work that you put in, your marriage can be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. We weren't taught in those scenarios that you just described how to cope when things went wrong, because we had no example of how to do that in a healthy way. So then if you just relying upon your own understanding, you've never been there before. You have to, as parents, we have to understand how to teach our children, or how to they give them the example on how to be when it's good, and then how to be when it's not so good. But like you said, everybody wants to close it up. Everybody wants everything to be behind closed doors. Well, how else do they learn how to process negative emotions? Because they're going to happen. And then I think I brought this up when you were on, Monica, when I had talked to a therapist previously about my marriage. She was like, you have to be committed to the institution of marriage, because people are fickle. We all, like you said, you guys have been together since college sweethearts. It is not like, it would be crazy to think that you guys are the same people that you started off this relationship as. So through all those changes, sometimes you just like, I don't even know what I'm doing, let alone how I'm bringing myself in this relationship. So you got to give the person space to do that. You know what I mean? Give them the space to grow and learn, but say, I'm going to love you regardless. Although it's a little hard at times, I'm gonna love you through your growing pains, because that is the part about the intentionality that we talked about. So I want to talk to you, like, I know you guys are saying being transparent and give realistic expectation. Let's talk about some specifics. Like, what are some things for couples starting out, or even couples who are on the same, like, have been together as long as you guys have been, but have not had the opportunity to grow? What are some of the things that you, like you said, having the realistic expectation, what are some of those things that you've seen people do, or some of the mistakes, maybe pulling from your own story, that you can give us as examples?
I know one of the things, and you hit on it, is setting those realistic expectations when you go into marriage. Is that just like you're not perfect and you come into the marriage with issues. I'm gonna say
Uh-huh.
issues because we all got them. We got
Right.
them. I'm gonna period point blank say issues. Is just like you're dealing with an issue. Your spouse is also overcoming issues. So
Mhm.
giving that room for growth. But in giving room for that growth, you have to learn to trust one another so that when those issues are identified, you can talk about them, you can put it on the table, and you can deal with them together. So, one of the things that Vincent and I really focus on, and we'll be talking about in one of our upcoming webinars, communication. Like people say, communication, communication, communication. It's very important. Make sure you're talking to your spouse. Get to know them. You know, we've been together almost over 25 years now, and we are not the same people we were at 18, 19 years old. We have so we have to continue to each other to get to know each other, get to know what we're changing into, get to know what our thoughts are, what our dreams are, what our aspirations are, what turns me on, what turns me off, what, who I'm evolving into, what I believe, what I don't believe. There's over 25 years, our conversations continue because it's always going. I think one of the most painful things for us is if we go out to eat and we're looking around because we talk and I talk a lot. But my husband talks a lot too. Do not let him fool you. And we talk and we talk and we talk. And we may look around that restaurant and you see the couple that everybody's looking at their phone, or somebody, we've seen couples that bring books. Like one man was reading a book and his wife was just sitting there. And those things are painful because I don't care if you've been married 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, there is still something you can learn and share and grow together. So we really try to help people talk, like use your words. It's like you tell your kids, use your words. That's even what we're teaching adults is use your words because they have power and they have meaning to help you grow in your marriage.
And I was going to say, for me, what I've realized, one of the most important things is when you first get married. Like people say, like that first 1 to 2, 1 to 5, 1 to 7 years is like the roughest time, roughest periods of a marriage. And I think that's because once again we come into this two different people, two different, totally different backgrounds, and let's be transparent. Like say for instance, for Monica and myself, Monica came from an environment where she saw her grandparents who had been married 50 plus years and saw how a healthy marriage and relationship should function. And then on the other side, you come from an area where you don't have that many examples of positive relationships and how marriages should function. So when you get married, you're supposed to become one. So that becoming one is you're bringing all of my issues, all of her issues, all of my parents' issues, all of my grandparents' issues, everybody that I've seen as had an example of a marriage, I'm bringing that into this relationship. Now we have to make this work. So you have to be understanding even when you have those arguments, looking at your spouse and saying, okay, I wonder where that came from. I wonder why they said that. That's probably because of the perception that they have, not even from your relationship, but from somebody else's relationship that they saw, that they've seen. So it's just when that part of becoming one is truly becoming one. Because a lot of times you're here, people, we talk to people and you hear people say, well, I, I just don't like this because I don't feel like myself anymore. I don't feel like myself anymore. Well,
Yeah.
newsflash, you're not supposed to feel like yourself anymore. You're not supposed to feel like the old Vince or the old Monica or the old Maria
Right.
because you're becoming one. So that person, in a sense, that person dies to a sense, but you become something new and something better, something greater. So you have to be willing to evolve and go through that process with your spouse.
Yeah, I think that's cool how you just put it because it should be an evolution. It shouldn't be that they're filling in gaps or, fulfilling who you are. It's that you're taking the parts of you and together you guys elevate and evolve to something different. I like how you put that. I like that. I like that. Because I think again, when we go into any type of relationships, we go into it with like or with them, like what's in it for me, but it should be mutual. I'm going to tell you, I had conversations with friends of mine who are single or who date, and I'm like, well, I get traditionally the conversation is that, you know, the woman is needing to make sure, the guy is needing to make sure that he's buying over the woman and everything, but what are you bringing to the table too? It's not, because both of you, I'm thinking about, I have a daughter and I have a son, and both of them, I want them to find mates that are bringing things to the table to match them. I don't want my son to have to do more work to find a mate than my daughter. She got to come and represent. If not, the relationship that requires two people will not be successful because one person is not willing to do the work or not willing to invest as much of themselves and be transparent as the other person. And you both have to do that. So I think starting from, like you said, from square one and understanding there should be an evolution to this. And if it's not, then somebody need to talk to somebody. I need something got to happen.
You gotta check it. Yes, you absolutely do, because that evolution is real, and it should not just be the evolution of you all getting to know each other and growing your marriage, but it needs to be an evolution of you getting to know yourself.
Yeah.
Because so often we're pointing the finger at our spouse, and every time we have ever gone to a counseling session, and there have been many, um, they've always turned the mirror on the individual,
Right.
because it's so easy for me to look at my husband and say, you're not doing this and you're not doing that, and it's harder to look at yourself, but that's necessary in a marriage. How am I bringing my best self to the table regardless of him? How am I bringing my best self to the table? And so those are things that we have to learn in marriage, that yes, you are becoming one, but how are you bringing your best self to the table? Because if all you're worried about is what your spouse is doing, then you spending more energy in doing that when you can be evolving into who you are desiring to be and become. So if both of you are doing that, that's how that elevation takes place.
Yeah, and I think you need to have those conversations too, about what you're bringing to the table. So there should be some getting to know each other, understanding like what is your past, what was your representation of relationships, because I'm going to have to be sensitive to the fact that you're not going to know. I'm going to use the example that's a little bit out of relationships specifically, but for my husband, his interaction, as far as being a parent, was different. I always had everybody's kids, and I was like, I'm playing with kids. I know what to do. And it used to be weird because stuff with our firstborn, he used to watch me, like how I interacted with her, and then kind of mirror it. And I was like, you're weird. What are you doing? Like, just pick up the baby, like, dude. But I had to understand, like you said, what was his examples? What, he didn't come from an affectionate, loving, playful, like his environment was way different from mine. So me just going into it expecting him to match me, not respecting that you don't know what you don't know. So I'm like, I had to be patient. I had to be understanding. And the fact that he was trying, it was weird because I'm like, who doesn't know how to do that? But he wasn't there. And that's the thing. Everything that we don't have everything. Everybody's not coming to the table with experience everywhere. And the hope is that there is things that you can compliment each other on, but you got to be open to them learning and growing some. And like me being the one who can provide that example, and then being open to receiving their example on the things that I need to work on, which is difficult sometimes because you start prioritizing what's more important. Like you start thinking, well, you should be able to do this. I mean, that's not a big deal. But if that's what your partner needs, then you need to be making it a priority. I want to shift a little bit to how you have those discussions, because you've mentioned, both of you, a few times about counseling, right? So obviously you are an advocate for getting counseling where needed. So what do you think? Where do you think you should be pivoting to counseling? Like, is that something that you just suggest doing regularly, or are you waiting until you start to feel some issue? What is your stance on when you should introduce that to your marriage?
So we initially went into counseling. We went into marriage counseling when we first got married, even premarital counseling, so, we sat down early on. We sat down with our pastor who was in New York, where we lived at the time. We also sat down with my pastor who was in Texas at the time, even before we got married. So early on, we were open to the idea of sitting down and having conversations. And I can remember our pastor in New York, he and his wife at the time, they both let us know this won't be your last time in counseling, you know. And so for us, it didn't seem very foreign. Um, you know, my recommendation is that, you know, marriage is like anything else. You need a tune up. One of the things we do, and it may not always be formal counseling. Typically, people are going to counseling when there are some maybe unresolved ideals or issues that need to be dealt with, whether it's individual, whether it's family, or whether it's marriage. So definitely leave yourself open to that. But you should be constantly working on your marriage. So we attend marriage seminars. We attend marriage conferences on an annual basis. And we do that because that's our time to focus on our marriage. This year we didn't get to do it because of COVID, and we normally go in February, and we didn't go. So it was a little awkward for us not going, only to find out that guys had something totally different in the work for us to be leading webinars. But that has been instrumental in our marriage, is going on an annual basis to some sort of conference. And we've done it from the beginning of our marriage. No matter where we live, we always went annually to a conference, because we know we don't have all the answers. And sometimes you just need somebody sitting next to you, either at the conference, at the table, to laugh at the jokes. So, you know, I'm not in this by myself. Everybody dealing with crazy a little bit. You know, you need to be able to release and deal with that and have commonality with people. So my recommendation is at least do something annually. And if you need additional help, definitely go to counseling.
And this is just specifically to the guys that may see this. Put your ego down, put your pride down. Because so many times guys get this thing, they get all this air in their chest, and they're like, "Can nobody help me with my marriage? I don't need no help. He can't tell me nothing." Yes, he can. Yes, they can. They can help you. You don't know everything. So it's about being vulnerable, not just for your spouse, but in front of other people that can hold you accountable. Because if you're not willing to go to counseling with your spouse, then I'm telling you, this thing's not going to work. So I've seen that so many times that marriages could have been saved, but on the husband's part, we have this thing sometimes growing up that we have the wrong ideal of what a man truly is. We've been fed this false narrative. Man shouldn't do this. A man shouldn't do this. A man should do this, and a man should do this. And a lot of that stuff was wrong. Well, speaking from my past, a lot of that was wrong. So put your pride down, put your ego down, and go seek counseling with your spouse. Because typically we see, I would say, when couples need counseling, 70% of the ladies are willing to go, and then the men are just like, well, we'll work it out on our own. And I've been at those points too, at different points in my life. But it's not until I was able to put my pride down and say, hey, maybe somebody else can help me with this and give me a different view. Because when it's just me and my wife, sometimes just communicating about things, I may not be able to see it clearly. But when somebody else articulates it and puts a different spin on it, oh, maybe the light bulb comes on, and then we can get the help that we need.
Yeah, I think with counseling, it's just because I would say for myself, in the community that I grew up in, it wasn't a word, it wasn't familiar. It wasn't something that people were comfortable talking about. It was always associated with some like, ooh, that's bad, like some problem that was just out of control. When you want to go to counseling at the first signs, if that is the case, and not wait till it's like, this is it, I'm out the door, like 1 foot out the door, and then go. But at the same time, wherever you are in your journey, just consider all of your options, because we don't know it all. We talk about parenting. Everybody can get on the bandwagon when we talk about we don't have all the answers. It doesn't come with a manual. Do this. And then it's like troubleshooting in the back. Like, what if my kid's doing this? They're okay with that, but they don't think the same about relationships. They're all the same. We don't always know how to deal with it. And we have to be honest as women, what we bring to the table. Because I know a lot of times I feel like I have the answers, but you're just not listening to me. But I got the answer. And that's not the case either. Like, I have to be as open. The thing is to becoming raw. And that's one thing just to mention when you're going to counseling, just be aware that because they are peeling back layers and making you expose the rawness of yourself and your situation, sometimes that doesn't feel good. But that is not going to stay. The point of that is to allow you to get the air in there, get the healing to start, and then it will get better, because then you can actually make strides to improve upon those things that you have hidden behind those bandages and wraps. So just don't give it a try, and don't think one going, oh, I don't like the way I felt, because work, just like when you go to the gym, I'm just bringing this up because Vincent is right here. I see all the people that work with you who feel like, oh my gosh, she's killing me. But then at the end, they have these great results. It's the same thing. In the beginning, it may feel uncomfortable, it may feel painful, because like you got to look that introspection and like, I'm the one who is causing this part of our problem. That's hard to deal with a lot of times. But open yourself up, give yourself time to heal and grow through it, and I think it'll benefit your relationship. So I want to spend a little bit more time talking about maybe some more tidbits, and then I want to make sure we have time to talk about what's coming up with the webinars that you got going on. So what other words of advice? We talk about expectations, we talked about intentionality. Do you guys have anything else, like words of wisdom that you would give someone in general who's saying, I'm just not sure about what's going on with my marriage or connecting with their spouse?
Deal with the pain. Like, period, point blank, deal with the pain. There will be pain, as people are evolving and growing and you're peeling back those layers. There's pain that comes along with that sometimes. We deal with topics like, you have financial hardships, you have intimacy hardships, you have infidelity in your marriage. You have these things where now you're having to overcome those types of obstacles. Like, dealing with the pain is necessary. And sometimes it becomes easier to just walk away from it. Mm-hmm. But when we say we're going to work on it, when we make that commitment to our marriage to stay in it, then it means, okay, now I got to roll up my sleeves and I got to actually deal with that pain. And that does require things like counseling. It requires talking to each other. But it also requires those looks in the mirror. It requires that transparency where you're talking to each other and you're using words like, it hurts me when. Mm-hmm. You using your words, you're using those emotions that you're feeling in a very vulnerable way. But I will tell anybody, if you are not going to be vulnerable with your spouse, the person who you've made a lifetime covenant with, who else in this world are you going to be vulnerable with?
Right.
And so what we really try to help in peeling back those layers, because it's what we had to do in our own marriage, is you got to really lay yourself before your spouse and say, here I come. I come open, and I wish I could say unashamed, but the reality is you come with those shames. You come with, this is me, all of my imperfections. And I believe that when we do that together and we humble ourselves, then you'll learn that, somebody that's really there for you, they'll take you with the scars and all, and they'll love you through it. But you got to be willing to reciprocate that and do it, because there's often a lot of pain because people are bringing those past experiences, how they grew up, trauma that they've experienced in their life. You're bringing all of that, and you are the only two people when the lights go off and the kids go to bed and the people from work are not there, the pastor not in there, your best friend is not with you. It's just you and that other person. That's when you really have to place yourself before somebody just naked, like you are naked before your spouse, and so you got to deal with that pain, and you got to really make yourself vulnerable. But I guarantee you, when you do it, it's a beautiful thing on the other side of that pain. I think people are expecting for you not to be able to say that there's going to be some pain. That's not reality. Anything that you have, especially something that you have that's worth something, it's going to be some work and it's going to be some pain, like working out. There's that pain and you like, I don't want to do that no more. So my leg was hurting, my arms was hurting. But when you start to see the fruit of it and you start to see the results, only the strong survive. Like, you're going to have to pull out your big girl, your big boy, and let's get it. but there's something great and there's something beautiful on the side of it.
Yeah, I agree. I know that when we're talking, and sometimes when people are watching other people talk about the journey, it's like, yeah, I know it's going to be pain, but sometimes that pain, Eli,
It's,
knocks you off of your feet, and it requires
yeah,
you to regroup and really figure out, like, again, what am I focused on? Am I focused on loving that person through it all, and not going through the habit of weighing like your issues has more weight than this person's issues, or like trying to give a number or an impact of like, okay, well, you did this and that's
that was
worth anything
big.
I could ever do. You know what I mean? But it all plays a part in it. It's all a dynamic that you're creating with that other person. And like you said, this profound is that you choose your mate. It's different from relationships like family members, like your children. You born into the family that you have. Your children come out the way they're gonna come out, but you make a choice to be with the person that you know determined to be your significant other. And with that comes responsibility for you to allow that person to be a human being. Now, I have to give this disclosure statement. That doesn't mean that you stay in marriages, that there's exceptions to every rule. So we're not saying that everybody should be giving all these sacrifices. To some marriages, I can't give you that answer or where the line is, but don't take this advice and saying that you have to continue to give if the other person is not meeting you halfway. So that's the other reality of marriage, is that it is some situations that can't
Yes,
Yeah.
be, yes, can't be free.
absolutely.
It
Absolutely.
takes both people that have to be willing to put the work in. You
Yes.
can't have one person that's willing to stick to the commitment and the other person not, and the marriage work. It's not until both people are 100% in. It's not a 50-50 relationship. It's 100%, 100%. Both people have to be committed and willing to work on it. You don't have to be both perfect. You don't have to both have all the answers, but you do have to be willing to put the work in.
And it
Yeah.
might seem like your 100 is different from the other person's 100, but are they showing up? When we work with
That's
couples, are they showing up? Are they trying? And it might be you're trying to, swim in the ocean and they still wading in the baby pool. But sometimes you got a glimmer and it's there. We won't even work with couples when it's just the wife or it's just the husband. Because then, okay, if it's the husband, then you need to talk to Vince one-on-one. And if it's just the wife, you need to talk to Monica one-on-one, because all I can give you is the perspective that you bring to the table, because
right.
every person is bringing their own truth, their own reality to the table. And that may be very different. And so it's like, even if the husband or the wife is willing to show up, to me, we always like, okay, we ready. If
Yep.
both people are present, there's something you can do with that.
Yeah.
So I totally 100% agree, is that it takes two. It takes two to do the work together. It's absolutely important.
I think the 100%, I think we should be reframing it to think like 100, like you said, being present, because your 100% is, that's what I was thinking. As soon as you said, I was like, that's exactly what I was going to say, is that we think 100% means all this effort and all the best self all the time. But it's like, again, no matter if you're single, divorced, married, you just a human being, and with that comes flaws naturally. You're not going to have great days always. You're not going to be firing at all cylinders. Sometimes you're like, I don't even want to be bothered. Y'all can eat some
Yes.
sandwiches for dinner. I doesn't mean I love you any less. I just don't have it. Like, you're not going to be perfect, period. But as long as I'm willing to keep being in there, and as the waves come, whether we high tide or low tide, I'm still here functioning and understanding and putting my effort towards some effort that I have towards the ultimate goal. That is 100% being present. If you got to make, so just being realistic, if you have someone who doesn't seem like they want to be committed, like you've done the counseling, like you've spoken to them about the things that hurts you, and you feel like nothing is changing, there's nothing from them. That's what we're talking about. Someone who's not showing up and who's not taking the information, are not seeming to care about the things that you're presenting with. That's where you need to probably go speak to someone one-on-one and figure out what's going on with you and what it is that you really want to do. So just giving that
And
disclosure.
that's the key word you said, what you want to do,
Right.
because you still have your choice.
Yes.
You still have your choice.
Yes, I love it. All right, so let's talk about the marriage and relationship seminars that you have coming up. Let's talk about like how that came about, and I actually shared the link on the Facebook page. So if you're interested, after hearing all about the great things that's coming up, you can go to the Facebook page and it'll have the advertisement for it and the link in the comment section, I believe, or on the post. It has the link to register for the webinar. So give us some information about what's coming up.
Yay. So we have a marriage and relationship webinar coming up, and it's actually 3 separate series. The first one is on communication, the next one is on intimacy, and then the third one is on forgiveness. Vincent shared that we did a marriage event on Valentine's, and it was so much fun, where we got to talk to couples, and we talked about, dating and intimacy, which we think is hugely important in marriage.
Huge. It's huge. It's huge.
He said
This is favorite topic. If anybody want to know, is intimacy. You just gotta know your mate. I tell folks he didn't marry me for my cooking, right?
I'm just here to try to help the people. I'm here to try to help the people.
So yes, he like anytime I'm like, so the people want to talk about sex. He like, okay, so what time we show up? He just ready to talk about it. He like, so for the men, that's why I showed up today. But after we did that, we were like, oh, that was so fun and so exciting, and we were actually starting to miss the fact that we didn't go to the marriage conference this year. And then out of nowhere, our pastor that we had when we were first married in New York,
that did our premarital counseling.
And his wife, they reached out to us and they said, hey, you know what? On Valentine's, we actually, for the first time, did a session together for our church on marriage, because our church has been asking a lot about marriage and doing a seminar. And they said, hey, we're meeting on Monday. And literally, this was like a couple of days before. They said, hey, would you be interested in dialing in and at least talking to our congregation and maybe sharing a little bit about LoveWorks? And so we were like, yeah, sure, we will. And I actually met Vincent up at his gym because he had just finished doing a workout session. So he's sweaty trying to change shirts. And we went in there and we shared with their congregation, and we had an amazing time. They asked very open, honest, and that's the environment we love to be in, is where people are asking and they're wanting, because that means you're hungry for it and you're really willing to work on your marriage. And we just had an amazing time with them. And they started messaging Pastor Edward Williamson and Reverend Deborah Williamson at Bethel Baptist Church in White Plains, New York. And she was messaging me and she's like, oh my gosh, they loved you all. And we were like, oh, okay, that's exciting. And she's like, hey, would you all be interested in doing some webinars? And so we thoroughly, trust them and are very grateful for who they've been in our life. So the funny part is, like, the very first couch we sat on, when we didn't have a clue what we were about to embark on, were the very same people that also see what God has done in our marriage and has called upon us. And so we are grateful for the opportunity to work with them. And it's open to any and everyone. That's we talk about COVID and all the crazy things that have happened, but it's opened up a world of opportunity for people. To where we can get on a webinar and we can answer questions and we can have very open, honest dialogue. So we're really excited about that. So the first one is March 18th on communication, April the 15th on intimacy, and May the 20th on forgiveness. So we're excited about that and ready to get into it.
I think those are the top three
Yes.
things to talk about like I know we were giving him teas and vents about intimacy, but that's important as
Yes.
well, especially I mean if you're considering that in a marriage, this is it. Me and you.
Me and
That's all we
you.
got. So you have to be comfortable having the conversation. Like you said, you have to be. Now we said this is a little corny, but you said you have to be naked in front of you. Got to feel comfortable, figuratively and literally being that way in front of somebody. That this is your end all, beat all. That's supposed to be for the rest of your life. So some people, like you said, don't come with that openness. Don't come with what intimacy really means, and understanding that it's a lot more than just what happens when you get in the bed, the lights go off. It's more than that. And because they don't have that, where else are they getting it except for wonderful webinars and things like this that you guys are hosting? So I really like how you're touching on it to make it just common to talk about communication, common to talk about intimacy and forgiveness. Oh my goodness. I told you I am going to make sure I already told my husband we're going to go to that one because I know that's something that I personally deal with in my marriage is understanding that journey. And if I'm still here, I have to figure out how to make sure forgiveness is still a part of our story. Like you can't go through something or go through the pain and not bring forgiveness with you, because if not, then it'll keep recycling. You'll keep having those feelings. So I'm admitting that I need to work on that. So I said we definitely will be there. From the other ones I'm going to try just because of scheduling conflicts, but we're definitely going to commit to that one. And that's what all you can do is commit to the work, commit to the
Exactly.
be present in spaces that will give you what you need. So I am super excited.
Yes.
Super excited about it. Just about the fact that because like I said, your transparency and the connection is just so real. Like there's nothing about you that says that you think that you're up here and all couples are down here. You make it feel like, we all in this together. Marriage is this, but the work, that's the only thing that will separate you from other marriages, is that you guys have decided that you're willing to put in the work, and so can other people. So
And I guarantee you, Maria, every topic that we're talking on, we don't have to use anybody else as an example. We don't. We can just use ourselves because
yeah,
because we
real.
dealt with it, and in many cases dealing with
Mhm.
it, but we're putting in the work, and we're doing what it takes. So we don't have to use anybody else as an example.
And just like you say, we're talking about communication, intimacy, and forgiveness, and just helping people understand that couples may have different versions of what those words mean to them, and having to help them explain to their spouses and share their understanding or their definition of intimacy or communication. And like just transparent for me, realizing that as far as like we touch on Monica, I always touch on the intimacy topics, but for when it comes to intimacy in our household, there's foreplay that takes place. And when I say foreplay, that may be from the time I get up that morning to go to the gym, where I notice that the trash in our bedroom is overflowing, and I need to pick that up and I take it out. And as I just send her a message or a text throughout the day to say, "Hey, beautiful, how you doing? Love you. I'll be glad when I get home. Whatever. Or do you guys need anything? You and the kids need anything before I come home? When I walk in for lunch or something, a kiss on the neck while she's working virtual from home." And it just keeps
Her smiling.
building. That keeps building throughout the day. So if it comes to a point where you're intimate that night, it's not something that you have to force,
Yes.
because that
Or at lunch,
at lunch,
the people have to that kiss was,
because it's been building up. So you got to realize what each other's needs are, so you can meet those needs. If you're meeting those needs, intimacy follows.
Say that again.
I said, if you're meeting each other's needs, the intimacy will follow. It doesn't have to be forced. That your spouse will want to be intimate with you, because then they get to share their most intimate parts of themselves with you, and that connection is made.
Well, there you have it. And if
People.
but y'all, that means y'all need to share that because that message a lot of people need to hear. And I like how you said, Vince, that it is specific to the couple. No
Yeah.
two people and what their relationship represent is going to be the same. All we can do is talk through the theories behind getting to figure those things out and the theories on working on things. It's like, and then fill in the gaps with the specifics of what you and your significant other need. But it's not a one-stop shop. It's not a like you get a bag and you open it up and all these things, apply those tricks and you're good. It's not that way. You have to get to know what like each of the people in the relationship, what they need, what are they presenting with. And I've done some conversations around love language. That's a good topic to talk about here because I talked about love language, and when I did it, I was talking about love language for yourself, like self-care, so you can really hone in on what you like, so you identify that. But the key with it in relationship is that we tend to perform out of our own love language instead of understanding the love language of the person who's receiving it and making sure we're doing those things. So like I like acts of service. So I like when people do something for me, like go out of the way, like taking the trash, doing these things. My husband likes to receive gifts, like to him, thinking about him and something he needs and like me getting it. That's great to him. But to me, I mean, I like who don't like gifts. But on my scale, it's like number 7. Like, yeah, that's nice pocketbook. But up here, if you've done acts of service, that has more impact to me. And what happens is if I give him acts of service, I mean, he likes that too. But if I give him acts of service, I'm expecting him to be as grateful as I would be if it was done to me, when that is not his love language. So already I'm not giving him what he needs, right? I'm giving him what I think he should need because that's what I like. You should like, like that's not how it works. You like too. Why you want to get gifts over me doing all these things? I cook for you. I do all these things. And while it does matter, it's like I'm trying to make an impact and make him feel seen. Then that means that I have to look at what his love language is. And that's a good place to start. And really go, I think couples that are listening to this, go back and think about like what your love language is and what do you consider that you do to show love to your partner, and if it is in your language or in their love language, because then that might be an easy shift to see changes in the way that they respond to the things that you want them to do, because then they feel seen and or heard. Just little
Yeah,
tips.
because if it's not in their love language, then your efforts are just being wasted.
Wasted.
And then it just becomes a frustrating situation for both individuals because
Right.
you're putting in work, you feel like you're putting in work, and then you're not seeing the fruits of your labor. But you're putting in, like you said, you're putting in the work based upon your love language, not your spouse's.
Start right there. I'm telling you, start there. Start there. If you feel like you guys are having a hard time connecting, start there. Because I feel like that one thing changed my perspective on a lot of things. Like, you right. You do like that. But same thing with him. I'm like, you buy me this pocketbook. I like pocketbooks, but at the same time, it doesn't mean the same for me for you doing all these other things. So you have to be open to having those conversations. And then this is something too, who talked about love languages when I was growing up? Who talked about love languages when this is something that I came to know as already in the throes of marriage. So this, you have to be open to the different theories that can be applied to help you where you are. So it's just like all the things that we've talked about up until this point, you putting all these pieces together. It's not going to be a one thing. Well, I did this. Why is nothing changing? I wish it was that easy. It's not going to be that easy.
That's opening yourself up to putting yourself in different places to be exposed to that type of knowledge. We use the love languages like as a fundamental part of working with couples because it was instrumental for us to really understand like what's our tick from a need perspective. But putting yourself in the environment where you're doing counseling or you're doing conferences or you're watching webinars or you're watching, podcasts, those things that open you up to those things so that you do continually get better. It's not okay enough to say, well, I didn't grow up seeing that anymore. You have a wealth of knowledge that's out there for you today, as married couples to tap into it. And it's worth putting in the work to get the results that you're really looking for.
And I always look at stuff like putting in the work. You got to think about in life, everything that we do to be successful, we get training. We get training for. You start a new job, you you get training when you get on the job. Or if you play a sport, you're constantly training. So when it's game time, you're ready. But people don't look at marriage the same way. Like these seminars and workshops and books, that's training. So that way, when it's time to perform, when you're in the marriage, then you'll know how to handle yourself. It's kind of like you take a high school quarterback and throw him into a professional game. He's not going to be ready. Mm-mm. And for me, that's kind of what marriage, that's how my marriage was. You took me not knowing anything about successful marriages and then just threw me in the game, coach, and then expect me to be a great husband. Right. Nah, it doesn't really work like that. Just because you said I do, don't change the dynamics of the relationship or what you know. It's about getting the proper training to be successful.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that I've also told this to a friend of mine who was looking at like her life in general. It represents success from a career perspective, as a parent, but in the relationships, it's always like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I'm like, the same effort that you put towards being intentional about investing in what you know about your career or doing what you need for your children is the same effort and intentionality that you have to put in pursuing relationships. It's not like that fairy tale is like, I'm going to fly, it's going to feel these butterflies, it's going to be great. Because maybe when the first couple relationships, but after that, we realized really quickly that is not what real relationships are made on. It's way more than that. And yes, you do want to have all the feels. Like, I'm not saying don't have the feels, but then it's like, okay, turn the page. And then what do they have as it comes? And then turn the page. And what about this stuff? You can't just fall into relationships that you want to be successful. It requires work on yourself and knowing what you bring to the table, as well as identifying the things that you're even looking for in a mate, and not just saying anybody can fit the bill, because everybody can't fit the bill because we're all different. So it's just all pieces of it. I'm glad that the webinars that you guys are doing is not just for marriage, it's encompassing relationships too. So all those people out there who are like just getting into relationships and starting to date and trying to make sure they're prepared, marriages, like all of that stuff, go ahead and check it out. Because again, like, you have to step into spaces that are going to provide you information and ways to think about things differently. Open your mind, Craig. Open your mind to the possibilities. So the time is starting to, I feel like, I didn't even like, it's about to be an hour. Dang. But I really have enjoyed this chat, and I hope the viewers have too. But before we get out of here, I always like to give the guests an opportunity to give us the takeaways that they want people to have as they leave us today.
So I just was sitting here thinking as you were talking, it's easy to fall in love. It takes work to grow in love. And what we desire for marriages is that husbands and wives grow in love. And that growing takes work. It takes putting in the work, the effort. It may take the counseling sessions and the seminars and the conversations and the learning how to be intimate and learning how to acknowledge the right love language. It may take all of that, but that is how you grow in love. And when I think about love, I think about the love that I did see growing up, in that to their last breath, there's someone that sits beside you, and there's somebody that's there with you, and you've shared a whole life of family and careers and journeys, and you want to grow in that love. So something so important is worth you putting in the work. And so I'm really excited about what God is doing in this season to help married couples grow in love.
And for me, and I'll speak specifically to the men, a man of God. So realizing that your wife is a gift from God, and that when we talk about a gift from God, that to love her like Christ loved the church, you got to know your word. You got to read your word, because if you don't know truly the depths of how Christ loved the church, that agape type love, you can't really know how to love your wife. So for me, it's come learning how to love the gift that God has given me, and to spend every day showing my appreciation for that gift.
Well, there you have it, guys. So thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. I know it was a little bit last minute, so I appreciate you being able to work me into your schedules. I feel like the information that we provided them and giving them the opportunity to see what you guys got coming up with that webinar is going to be invaluable and priceless to a lot of people and their marriages and relationships, including myself. So thank you for always being transparent and putting yourselves out there to share what your experiences to help others be better and live their best lives in their relationships. So as always, guys, Saturday, Self-Care Saturday, you don't want to miss it because you never know who's going to be here and the type of wonderful conversations that we had. You won't want to miss it. Again, thank you to Vincent and Monica. Remember, you can go to their LoveWorks community information. The webinar information is on here as well, correct?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
so you guys can go to their Facebook page, IG page, or the website to find the links to the webinars, or you can go to the Facebook page because again, I put the post this morning that has the link and tells you a little bit more information, the dates and the topics. You can sign up through there. Thank you again for coming, guys. Bye, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday, and as always, be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Bye, y'all. Till next time.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.